Hey everybody, what's up? We're back again, and this is number five, I think. But we recorded one in between, and that one was gonna be a guest called a roadcast.
Yeah, that's right. Our good friend Ricky coined the phrase roadcast. I don't know what you guys think about it, but I
There's
like
probably
it. It's got a
somebody's already
nice
done
ring
it
to it.
because I've heard of people who do like vlogs from like their car. They just
Yeah.
put like a GoPro in the corner or something and just do vlogs.
Does they do that?
Does they do that? Yeah, they does that.
Yeah.
But
We have a lot to talk about.
yeah, for sure.
Pretty big deal.
Something that dropped today for sure. Me and Ricky were actually just talking about this. He didn't have a chance to actually come in and record with us today, but something that I've wanted to talk about for a while. It's a topic that like people really should start discussing, especially considering that there's so much information being released around this subject. However, up until now, we haven't had a relevant reason for bringing it up as far as relating to some type of like current event. But as of now, that's kind of changed. Edward Snowden
Yeah.
actually just released some crazy documents. So basically, he had been looking for the asylum essentially to some country, and he was like, a bunch of different countries were giving responses back. You know, we can't give you any support.
Those being Bolivia. I know that we all know that Venezuela did it. Even Iceland said they would take him in. And I think it's important to note that the Bolivian president's plane was actually grounded in Austria and denied any access to airspace surrounding the area by the U.S. Air Force.
Yeah, you were saying like, imagine how that would fly if that was Air Force One.
Exactly. It wouldn't, folks.
Yeah, that's crazy. Definitely.
But that aside, the fact is, he's just now, upon being granted asylum in Venezuela, released documents pertaining to the UFO phenomenon and the state that the administrations around the world are in. Now, basically, they're extremely concerned because naturally we know that everything prior to this had been anything that had reached the public eye, had been dismissed as weather phenomenon or man-made objects. Now, these documents that Edward Snowden has released here speak to a very different reality, wherein they are not identified, most of which are seen coming up from geothermal vents underneath the seafloor and shooting up into solar orbit. Now, I for one am excited to say the least.
Pull up that article.
Sure.
Because we were looking for the actual wiki source too, but there's official statements that were actually given from Snowden's testimony on this. So,
well, I'll read a little bit here that Snowden himself is actually.
Is it up right now? Like, so people can see that.
Yeah, no, people can see this.
Okay,
yeah, but this he's actually quoted here as saying, "The highest levels of government don't know what to do about the UFOs, and the official story that they are all merely weather balloons or natural phenomenon have been clearly dismissed. If anything, these documents speak about UFOs as if they are surely guided by intelligence beyond our own. As it turns out, the most credible and inexplicable sightings of the vehicles that have been spotted leaving the sea floor at hydrothermal vents and directly entering solar orbit. Because ballistic missile tracking systems and deep-sea sonar are kept as state secrets, scientists don't have access to data about those objects. However, most of the contractors at DARPA are sure that that there is a species more intelligent than Homo sapiens living in the mantle of the Earth. It makes sense if you think about it, because that is the only place where conditions have been more or less stable for billions of years."
It's funny that comes back to like the Matrix essentially. Like, you know how they say that. What's the name of the city?
Zion.
Zion, and it's essentially just near the core, because that's like the last place where there's still warmth left. So that was kind of like, that was kind of a relating thing for me. Just the Matrix in itself was, I wouldn't say prophetic, because that would be a little bit of a gloom and doom kind of situation.
No, but I gotta say, as a kid watching it, it did rock my world.
Yeah, but like it had a lot of like it was based on a lot of metaphors of like different.
It was
stuff.
entirely biblical in a lot of ways.
Well, I wouldn't say biblical, because like
come on, he uses the name Zion. There's the one. He's the savior.
Yeah.
That to me sounds biblical.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But Just to finish up what he said here, doesn't really do you guys a whole lot of good to see the page, but just the same. Extremophiles, this is Snowden speaking again, extremophiles may live in different temperatures than us, but they have been able to thrive and develop intelligence at a seemingly accelerated rate. That's not true because they simply evolved at the same rate, but without many of the vicissitudes which set back surface life.
Yeah, so this is all from Snowden's official statement, right? So
Mhm.
that's what actually tripped me out
Mhm.
was that up until now, and a lot of people are aware of who Edward Snowden is now, just because of the amount of conflict that has
Yeah.
arisen with him having released the documents about the
Yeah.
NSA.
Yeah.
Um, these individuals like him and Bradley Manning, who also was a whistleblower.
Yeah.
Uh,
We definitely just speak to that.
yeah,
An individual like Bradley Manning, I don't believe receives enough attention these days, which is fair enough to say because what he's done to the administration, that is to say the U.S. administration, has set them back quite a lot in terms of public image. If you guys will remember, there was a video released a while back of helicopter pilots shooting at civilians. You remember the video? They say things like, "Give me something to shoot." They're just ready to go. The fact is, he released them, and as a result, he's being tortured to an extent actually much greater than those who say shoot civilians on the ground and are later court-martialed. These individuals don't get the punishment that he's receiving now for simply bringing attention. In fact, I've seen posts by American citizens criticizing him for his actions.
really.
Yeah, criticizing his actions for bringing this to their attention.
Yeah, and also, you know, people, even Edward Snowden has come under some scrutiny for what he did. What he essentially did was releasing, the fact that NSA actually does spy on everything that the American population does, right?
And prior to
And
that,
some people I don't understand how people can how they can stand on the other side of this debate.
I have a
Like,
theory about that. I think that those who criticize Snowden, or at least are more interested in the character defects that are presented, are those who are simply too invested in the system. You see this all the time when folks are ensconced in the comforts that they have developed for themselves, that they will reject truth outright because it would mean the end of their comfort.
mhm,
It's a brave new world, and frankly, to a lot of folks, it's scary as hell.
yeah,
But when you truly consider the facts, when you look directly at the issues, you have nothing to be afraid of. Consider the very worst of the scenario. It's never ever really that bad. But the problem is that, yeah, we do have a lot of individuals who are still remaining largely intransigent. They don't want to accept it. But that's going to have to change because really what I think it comes down to is you can accept the truth and you can accept your responsibility and the need to change, or we can remain blissfully ignorant and die together. Now, I personally believe that the latter is not an option. It might sound doom and gloom, but that is, I think, as realistic as it gets right now.
yeah.
Because this NSA documentation just released by Snowden shows us that there is a surveillance program in effect. What was usually referred to as a conspiracy theory is now out in the open.
Yeah, the funny thing is that a popular little, list of the top lists that are always out there. One that has been jumping across my page lately, and like I've seen it on my mini feed a couple of times, is how many conspiracy theories ended up actually being based on fact.
Mm-hmm.
Like MK Ultra, just a bunch of different ones were named, and conspiracy theories that at the time every individual who heard about this would criticize people that released information and talked about that kind of stuff. At the time it's like, what, MK Ultra? You have the government is trying to actually use mind control. Are you serious? Mind control? That's what nobody could actually get a grasp on that, right? And they didn't realize that if we can perceive it, the government will probably want to look into it, look into what it is, or if it's capable or if it's possible. So as far as what the government would be wanting to try or develop, I don't know, the scope of it. You can always go into comic book world, right? Just something really out of the comic books.
As a matter of fact, I hear a lot of whistleblowers, and I would recommend anybody who's interested in whistleblower material to go to sites like Project Camelot. That's a terrific site for many individuals coming up. but
Yeah.
but this information released by the whistleblowers.
Yeah, just turn your camera down a bit. Just a little bit. Turn it down. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But sorry. Anyways, as I was saying, anybody who's interested in whistleblower information, you can find on Project Camelot, and a lot of these individuals talk about the information that they have personally been experiencing. The whistleblower information that's being put out by these guys on Project Camelot, a lot of them actually speak to the fact that shows like Stargate SG-1, the Tomorrow People, shows that are coming out now actually do cover a lot of what they've interacted with personally. A lot of people talk about Stargates.
yeah.
Now, actually, NASA, you told me about earlier, actually released some of their research showing that in our atmosphere, in the Earth's atmosphere, there are actually direct connections to the sun.
Yeah,
Correct.
so it's actually like it's based on, I believe, somehow the magnetic fields and how they produce these like areas where at certain times of the day they actually create a direct molecular essentially like a wormhole kind of thing almost
Yeah.
from one point to the next.
Yeah.
And what they found is that it's from the outer orbit of Earth to just outside of the sun. So this actually was released by NASA, and so it's not some sci-fi or conspiracy stuff.
Yeah.
I wanted to actually speak about this with our guest that's going to be coming up
Yeah.
in the future with Raminder Singh.
So we
But,
don't have
like,
to go into
No, but
detail.
honestly though, like it is something that is really interesting and should be brought up.
Yeah.
And especially considering the fact that we are talking about UFOs and all this stuff.
Yeah.
It actually provides scientists with a possibility for explaining how space travel would actually be possible. Because before now, if you look at sci-fi movies, they never say that. Well, very few of them say that like these ships or UFO or whatever like things that they're traveling in. They don't ever say that we're traveling at light speed, because light speed isn't that fast on the grand scale. As strange as that sounds, the speed of light,
Yeah.
like to travel across the galaxy, even at the speed of light,
Yeah.
would take ages. Like,
No, and
right?
that's
so
what,
that's why they say warp speed in these movies or,
Yeah,
or TV
yeah.
shows. They make up this other like unit, right? And because scientists could never understand how it was possible to actually travel
yeah,
within like
to
even
have a craft move beyond the speed of light.
well, not even that. They're saying that like even if they move at the speed of light, right? Then like how are they like that's the fastest speed we could perceive,
Yeah.
right? But now because of these wormholes, they say that space travel is not necessarily like that people are just traveling in a linear line. Like they're going like line and then they go through warp, and this warp takes them like to the next point.
And there's a video actually, even I don't remember how old the kid is, but he's about, I think he's 12 years old, and his video basically discusses how the fourth dimension works, and he goes on up to the eighth, I believe. But essentially,
Well, is that kid that like he proves Einstein's theories wrong or something?
I can't
like,
attest to that.
Oh,
But,
okay.
but in
There's
his
some
video,
child prodigy. I can't remember what he is. He's like eating cereal or something, and he's debating Einstein's theories. So
no kidding.
Fun, yeah.
But this kid essentially shows us that when you move into, say, the third dimension, that's three-dimensional space, there's time space, we can actually jump from one point to the other when you move to the second dimension, because we have the two other dimensions incorporated into this one. Now, if you want to move at warp speed like you're describing, that's essentially moving into the fourth dimension, which bends space and time in the third dimension together to a point. It's like folding a paper, the way this kid showed. But again, I should say I'm way out of my limit here. This is just a passing fancy.
When you get into the field of knowledge or just the conversations that you can even relate remotely to like quantum physics, like I don't even know what quantum physics honestly is, and like Dr. Amit Gosal, like he was like this individual who's an insane mind into astrophysics, right, and quantum physics.
Yeah.
And he said that most of the time when people use that term, he lets them use it because, but they're not actually using it in the correct context.
Yeah.
They don't actually know what it means, right? So very few people so when it gets into that kind of stuff, like everybody feels like they're a little bit out of their element, right? Unless you're directly related to that field of study, like you're in
Yeah.
astrophysics, and
The reason I brought it up, and I believe I do have a limited grasp on it, enough to actually speak about it in general terms. When I talk about quantum physics, I'm aware that we're speaking about subatomic particles and the nature in which they interact, developing what we know of as reality now. Michio Kaku describes there only being one electron, which essentially, as he described it theoretically, bouncing back and forth between the beginning of time and the end of time. Those are just theoretical concepts, but essentially, if they were to bounce back and forth at the speed that they do, you could potentially perceive it as a single electron occupying every single space.
wow,
But again, quantum physics, true. Most people don't really apply it to the right context because it's just, what Einstein called spooky action at a distance. It's right out there. But
yeah.
it's just easier to say quantum physics because you're suddenly in the ballpark. You understand what we're discussing vaguely enough that you can actually contribute.
Hmm.
In the same vein, we might not be able to say, bring up surveillance or espionage. Neither you or I have ever had any experience in that field, but through the beauty of language, we're able to put it together. But I
Yeah.
would like to speak more on UFOs later in this discussion
Well, I
because.
mean, did we speak about the Death Star thing outside of the sun?
Oh no, we did not yet.
Okay, so like again,
Go ahead.
the Death Star claim is like where the conspiracy theorists kind of like went to town. But what the official statement, or the official story is that there was some pictures that were released by NASA themselves, and they released it to the public as part of some type of telescope's pictures. So they released these pictures and a video actually of the outer surface of the sun, and you can see like these storms and everything, and then you can see this massive dark object
Saturn-sized object, yeah.
that looks like it's apparently the size of Saturn, and you can see it kind of going, it's moving a little bit, and it extends this large arm-like feature
it looks
off
like
of
a
it.
tether
Yeah,
attached to
so
the sun.
again, like what you perceive from this, like you can look it up, and there's a lot of websites that just search Death Star and
Saturn-sized object,
Saturn,
circling sun. Any one of those will
any
bring you
one of
to it.
those. Yeah, so like it's really it is something that sounds like it's science fiction, but I ask that you check it out just to see like this picture because it's such
Yeah.
a trippy. It looks like something out of like War of the Worlds or something.
Yeah, because it reaches a certain point once it's circling the sun where it shoots off into space.
But I mean, that would be, I don't know, that would actually be kind of, it's interesting to think that you can have something like that big and going around. Because what were we saying, that suppose you needed fuel for some type of like craft, right? What would be the largest reserves of fuel that you have? Stars. So like stars, I'd say, are like little
Ideal.
SOs, right?
Little
Like-
SOs.
Like little, like, not little, giant. Sorry,
Yeah.
giant SOs. Juke. But yeah, I don't know. That's definitely something that has been.
Yeah. Now, I'd just like to say this because anyone can point to this video and say you guys don't know what you're talking about, and it'd be fair. But the fact is, when we look at things like this and we talk about things like this and we liken it to science fiction, that is our only frame of reference for anything going on outside of Earth. No, none of us, in fact, the majority of human beings, it's safe to say, have never been outside of the planet and cannot attest to what's going on outside of it.
Yeah.
And so naturally we'll jump to science fiction. But I put it to you that we have no way of knowing what looks natural. We might look at every video and say that's doctored, but the simple fact is you do not know what it would look like. We have no idea. We have barely a grasp of what goes on physically down here, let alone what's going on up there.
Yeah,
We
and
might
that's why I
imagine
was
space.
saying like that Red Bull guy, the guy that did.
Oh yeah, the guy that jumped
the Stratos?
from the stratosphere. Yeah.
Yeah, the Stratos project, right? I was like, what actually happened to him? Like, what if he went up there and he got like a peek and he saw like a bunch of just massive death ships? No, I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna go. Like, every one of us has thought about like how far can you stretch your you're thinking if you start believing in UFOs, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there is something like, to be honest, we don't actually know what's going on up there, like at all, right? You know, we are told and we see pictures and videos and stuff, but until, like you said, until anybody actually goes up there themselves, they don't know what's going on up there, and there could be something totally different than we actually think.
Yeah.
And a lot of conspiracy theorists say that, you know, we don't actually know what's going on in the Milky Way.
People that we might refer to as conspiracy theorists.
We are conspiracy theorists.
Totally,
right? So,
totally. The thing is,
maybe we should avoid that
using
labeling.
those terms.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't care. That term has already been thrown around for me so many times. Though.
Yeah,
it's lost its meaning.
It does. It's lost all meaning. But I'm just shooting my own thoughts out here now. This is purely my own opinion. But what I know of reality depends entirely on the span of my imagination, which means that everything that I can possibly interpret must in some way exist within my imagination for me to interpret it. You can't know what you don't know. You can try to make yourself aware of what the simple fact is.
And if you don't know, then you know, nigga. You just totally like...
I set myself up for that? Anyways. Our imaginations are our only guides for what we can perceive. Now, it might be fair to say that individuals that rely purely on scientific fact, or what they know of as being accepted within the mainstream, as their only measure of truth. And I think that's largely irresponsible, because that's secondhand information. None of us have really taken the time and asserted knowledge that we don't have.
These stupid, like, they get ads in them.
Yeah, because I had to pause it for that.
Yeah.
Shit, I'm losing my train of thought.
Fuck, I was trying to like look at them too.
Shit, man.
Sorry.
It's good.
The ads just top in.
Yeah. No, you can't help that. It's fine. Shit, what was I saying? Imagination. Relying on secondhand information is something we all do, but none of us will take the time to do the research ourselves. We might throw it up in conversation as we do, that scientists have discovered this.
Yeah.
Now, simply by saying scientists, that becomes a much more believable fact. The same thing with
like
John Cusack, actually. Yeah.
Yo, scientist, go get me something. I can't remember what his line was from How Big, but this guy's like, excuse me, janitor, can you go downstairs and take this weed for me? And he's like, yo, scientist, can you wipe up this ground for me? Thanks a lot. Right? You can never see that happen, though, right? Scientists do a janitor's job.
No,
go ahead.
We're going to have a class society.
Go on with yourself.
But we don't. We rely on information pulled by others. And one that does actually speak to the fact that human beings can only survive when some of us perform specialized tasks and contribute to others. You know, you could say that a janitor is just as necessary as a scientist. Yeah. There might be more of them, but the fact is their job is no less important. Anyways, it's important to do your own research naturally with everything. Don't take anything at face value, but just realize that all of the information contained within your head is a subjective truth. It's all subject to your own bias. And there is no such thing as absolute objectivity when you're dealing with human beings. What we might say could be objectively the truth, but simply having coming out of our mouth this information is subject to our own bias of timing, our selective release of information. So you'll never truly be able to escape that unless you're, off planet, out of the body kind of thing.
Yeah.
But just as long as we're spitballing ideas, I for one am just so excited now to see this information released about UFOs coming out into the mainstream and allowing people to scratch their heads and discuss it openly.
Yeah, it's been like honestly, like I've been hesitating when it comes to bringing this up on the podcast, just because it is so easily scrutinized by people. Once you start even discussing UFOs, that's one of those write-off topics that once somebody hears you even mention it, they'll be like, all right, this guy's a little bit of a wacko. We can't take him seriously. He believes in UFOs. Like, really? There's flying things that are flying around and probing people. The stories that people give out there are usually what, like, ruin it. Because, like, for so many people, they think that all of these stories of like people's first-hand accounts of being abducted or whatever, there's always like probing and these joke like parody things that happen. But if you actually look into it,
Don't
there's
joke
some
about
really
that, man.
yeah, but there's some legitimate like first-hand accounts that people don't really hear, and so it has been something that we've been hesitating on bringing up
Yeah.
just for that reason, just because we don't want people to lose their attention, right? And like as far as like that is definitely something that I've noticed, that if you bring up UFOs, you could bring up a lot of topics. Once you start saying to people that they instantly get the idea, the head. And I've always thought about the fact that this physical image that people always see of aliens, big heads and big eyes, where did it originate from? Like where
You
did
can
this?
actually look at. I mean, I'm not going to support ancient aliens. I'm referring to the show here. The theory, it's got quite a lot of holes in it. But I think the idea in itself that we were visited in the past is extreme. It's very plausible. You look at cave paintings. I mean, there are exactly that. There are images of what looks to be astronauts, individuals with large heads, black eyes.
Black
And
guys, like
black eyes.
okay, yeah.
Well, if you go down to Australia, yeah,
Like
there was a few black guys on the painting on the walls too. But,
yeah, straight up, yeah.
But I really want to hear from people about this, because not only have we been each one of us has our own story about it. In fact, everybody I've spoken to has one story. Either they have a friend that's had an interaction, or get out of my shot, or they themselves have had an experience. And when it seems to just scratch the surface when we talk about this, say we describe this information being released by Snowden. It's like, oh, there's craft and scientists don't know what they're doing. But go beyond that. Go beyond the fact that there are craft up there and think about who's piloting them. What might they be like? That this is something that just, I'm sure, fascinates everybody.
Yeah.
Because can you imagine how they might perceive life? What their reason for interacting with us here and now? And a lot of people definitely, you can come back to saying like, well, why aren't they showing up? Why aren't they here now? And there are so many reasons for that. Because even when you look at the way human beings might interact with a certain species, if we were to plant ourselves in their environment, let's take caribou up in, Nunavut. If we were to plant ourselves in the middle of their environment and expect them to behave as they are, it just wouldn't happen. I mean, they would obviously be really upset, and they wouldn't behave as they normally do. We wouldn't be able to acclimate ourselves to them. It would just throw things off. The only time we actually see there being a positive effect in interacting with other beings like that, taking animals as an example, is when we make short appearances and then we step back out. It's just make an adjustment here and then we leave.
Yeah.
And so it would be totally wrong-headed to assume that in order for them to make their presence known, which they have no reason to do, they would just insert themselves into the culture and really kind of blow the lid off things. This comes back to, I think, the development of human beings. Again, this is my opinion, but human beings are at a very fragile state in our understanding of the way things work. A lot of people, a common sentiment looking at the way the world works now is, we need somebody to come in and save us.
Yeah.
But that would ruin what we've worked for at this point. If we don't actually do the work ourselves, then we'll always have that in our minds, that we can make things as bad as we like and somebody will be there to clean up the mess. This essentially rules out any responsibility on our part.
That's why I think like the superhero movies can be so bad too.
Yeah, and this is why I raised a few eyebrows at Superman.
Again, right?
Yeah.
Especially like the Avengers, which we talked about so much.
Yeah.
They perpetuate that idea that you can rely on some kind of, and they even talk about ideas like nukes and stuff, like realistic things.
Yeah.
Realistic problems again, right?
Yeah.
That's like it's always interesting to see that it's realistic problems with an unrealistic solution.
Yeah.
Every single time.
I'd just like to say that while we do a lot of second guessing in our speech, trying to make sure that it's not going to be misinterpreted, frankly, I don't have time for people that shoot everything down, that have no interest in obtaining the truth. We all know the kind of people you might meet in daily life that simply refuse to acknowledge the fact that they are unaware of something. They'll write it off and say that there is a plausible explanation, usually relating to the mainstream official story, but they'll never say to you, I don't know that. What you're saying is a potential truth. In fact, there are truths in everything that every single person says.
Yeah, it's almost like people aren't willing to accept ideas that are that are out of their area of comfort.
Hmm.
Like for example, just imagine if we'd never seen horses before. You know, like we'd never ever seen a horse, we'd never heard of
Yeah.
a horse, and you saw a horse for the first time.
Hmm.
Like I was working at this place that had like a bunch of equestrian tracks and stuff, and so they had like a bunch of barns with horses, and these horses, just looking at them and seeing the structures of their bodies just being purely just muscle, this insane amounts of muscle,
Yeah.
these massive beasts, right? Just mind-bogglingly huge. And like if you'd ever seen those outside of your knowledge of having known about these things, it would completely like throw you for a loop.
Yeah.
Like there's even unicorns or what? They're just horses
Yeah.
with like a
With
couple
the
of wings.
horn of a narwhal on
And,
top.
yeah, and a narwhal in itself is another crazy creature
Yeah.
that would look like a mythical creature.
Yeah. A
And
whale
people
horn.
don't understand that, like if there's so many things that we already accept into our understanding
Mhm.
because we've seen them enough and we've
Mhm.
perceived them enough, right? So when people suppose the world does change to the point that the world does get the knowledge, everybody figures out that there's aliens out there, or gets proof that there's aliens, right? Then maybe like it will seem like one day we'll be like, can you believe that there's people out there that thought that the
still
world was
don't
flat
know?
and that
Yeah.
there wasn't UFOs walking around, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like you said, what was that movie?
Men in Black, when they brought that up.
Yeah, your favorite quote from it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. 100 years ago, everybody knew the world was flat. 50 years ago, everybody knew that the Earth was the center of the. Yeah, it wasn't 50 years ago. That's total BS.
Yeah.
But yeah, the quote's out there. But going back to the whole idea of putting out information and having it rejected, one of the wisest things I think I hear people say these days is, I don't know. And I say that because when you tell yourself that you know enough about a subject that you don't have to pay attention to any more information coming from it, you've denied yourself a world of knowledge. You can look at any subject that human beings have ever interacted with in the history of humanity, and you'll find that any subject has information that just keeps coming. Anytime we dedicate ourselves to it, scientists dedicate themselves to discovering or just working on a math problem, information keeps coming out on that subject. It'll always keep coming as long as we're interested in it. So to say that I know enough about something and I don't need to pay attention to it anymore, that is limiting me. Essentially, I'm crippled from learning any more about that. And I think you do that to your own detriment.
Yeah.
So relying on what others have said about UFOs and simply being afraid of what people have said about that falls in the same category.
Yeah, no, so definitely people like the main I'd say objective of us talking about this and bringing it up as a subject is it's something that you should research now. It's something that I'm starting to actually take a lot more seriously.
Yeah, and you'll find, I think I was, sorry to cut you off, but I was very surprised by this. You'd expect that being such a big deal as it is now, that there'd be enough information to back it up, that we should have heard about it a long time ago. It's fair enough to say. But you'll be surprised when you start to learn about this, just how much information is actually out there on the subject. How many individuals in all levels of government, in all levels of the military, Navy, aerospace, FAA, pilots, all of which attest to the same
Canada,
thing.
right?
The former Defense Minister of Canada, Paul Hellyer, coming forward and saying we're interacting with them. Actually, he did get a response back. He's actually quoted as saying that one of their craft, a jet, was following one of these ET craft, and they actually saw his jet fly apart. Now, this is because, actually, according to the ETs, their message to them was, your pilot died due to the colossal stupidity that he uh, exuded when he was following them, because their ships operate on a unique form of harmonics that when you're moving our mechanics around them, imagine for instance that their craft are molded. There are one single functioning object, whereas our jets, for instance, are pieced together. How many million parts are in a single jet plane?
Yeah.
So when you have something that's functioning using advanced technology as this was, it flew apart because it couldn't stand the vibration.
Yeah.
It was in the same way that you'd sing, as Paul Hellyer describes it, and a crystal
That's
goblet
trippy.
shatters.
Yeah, that's trippy. That's a crazy concept.
Yeah.
To grasp for.
Now, that's not to say that they think that we're all idiots. They all look at us as, according to some, they all look at us as lower developed. You know, we're all beings. We all come from the same place, essentially. You know, we all have the same components within us. But we're at just different levels.
Yeah. If you could bring this up, I'm actually okay. Don't keep pausing it though.
Oh, okay.
Just 1 second.
You want to talk?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you could bring this up, what's it called? I'm actually gonna go get us. I'm gonna get some water, or whatever. It's crazy hot today again. BC has had like a heat wave as of late. Toronto had one on the East Coast and stuff. Every city out there.
All over the world.
We're getting
we're breaking records like crazy.
So I'm gonna go get some water or something to drink or something. Yeah. But can you bring up this thing? It's 27 stunning works of art you won't believe aren't photographs. It's just my appreciation for art has really, like, I'd say, come from one of my friends, like my close friends growing up. He's always been really immersed into art, right? Like, doing now he's kind of taken his discipline more towards music, but he was really into like different types of sketching, painting and stuff, and like I got to see some of his works and it kind of made me appreciate art. Yeah, just bring these up and like I'm just gonna quickly. Yeah, these are definitely worth seeing though. Like,
so this is what you'd call photorealistic work. Now, I personally have had I've just loved art ever since I was a child. I've kept up with drawing simply as a means of expression. I know everybody has their own little form of call it a release. You know, be that sports, be that music, be that dance. Mine is art. I find every time I'm in a bad mood, it's been a long day, or I've just watched, usually it's after watching a documentary that's really made me feel upset, powerless, things like that, I'll usually sit down and crank it all out, put it in the sketchbook. That for me is catharsis. That for me is releasing it. But you can see here just what human beings are capable of. And I know that we've seen masterpieces throughout history. Look at the Renaissance. But like I was discussing earlier, in the way that human beings, dedicating themselves to whatever task, can pull out newer and more amazing bits of information from any subject. This is a testament to that. This guy's doing this on paper. Unreal. Thanks. But yeah, this is just a stupid thought of mine, but I've always wanted to see what it would look like if we were to get all of the famous Renaissance artists, the artists of today, put them together and have them work out an animation, a film. Can you imagine what it would look like if you had Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Mike Chan, he's a concept artist today who's just unreal. You have all of these guys working on a single animated movie that's maybe 30 minutes long.
Yeah. That'd be insane.
Yeah. It boggles the mind.
Especially with how insane animation is now. Yeah. Like, it's... Even animation is so realistic that it's insane. Like, that's totally a different scope of filming, right? I think that's going to be the word of the day today. I think it's the second time I use the word scope. So for those
I said the test twice.
Yeah, for those of you that haven't noticed, for some reason in each podcast there's usually one word that sometimes I guess it's like a word that we're happy that we thought of, and it'll come back into your thought process and we'll repeat it So
Hmm.
you might see the word sometimes in the description. Sometimes
Yeah.
I guess you got to figure it out on your own what the word was.
Mhm.
But there's usually a word, to be honest.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah. You know, I learned about a phenomenon recently called the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, and that's where everybody has the experience of learning about something. You know, for instance, you learn about the NSA. A lot of people haven't really put too much attention into that. It's a pretty secretive organization,
yeah,
but you'll see now that it's all over the place. Not just because it's receiving more attention in the media, but in outside sources. You might just flick open a book and you'll notice the acronym NSA there. But backpedaling a little bit, I think that comes into the way we talk. You know, one of us might think of a word that just beautifully encapsulates what we're trying to say, and with that in mind, it just finds its way into whatever else we're trying to say, even if it's not exactly the right fit.
yeah,
I mean, do your own podcast, you'll notice it coming up too.
yeah. No, and that's something that we encourage, by the way. Anybody that is listening to this podcast, the few out there that are, right? If you are just, it's so easy to do this, to actually start a podcast or to start a vlog or to
Mhm.
start a blog or to start.
Yeah.
There's so many different social media services out there that you can utilize. There's a website. Have you heard of that web series, the YouTube channel? It's called Life According to Jimmy.
No.
Okay, they have he just released his 100th video or something. Really, really successful YouTube channel. Each one of his videos has over 500,000, and the top ones have over a couple of million hits and stuff. Each one of them. So he's doing pretty well. And they started this website because they started about a year ago. They started the channel, and within that much time, there's been evolution of this channel, and they started this movement called the Young and Boss movement.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I haven't heard anything good or bad about it necessarily,
Yeah.
but apparently they're helping people who want to start blogs, want to start social media
Really?
websites, and so you go there and you pitch your ideas, whatever, and sometimes they agree to come on and partner with you or
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
sponsor you and stuff, and it's kind of interesting to see
Yeah.
that youth are doing stuff like that, and
Yeah.
if it's not for the express purpose of just making money, then that would be awesome.
Now, you know what? I'll be honest with you. I'm not really interested in money right now. Frankly, I
More
feel
money,
as
more
a
problems.
yeah, no joke. You know, I personally I listen to Atma. For you guys who don't know him, he's an MC. He's got some amazing work out there, and he refers to money as an illusion. Frankly, that's to me the case. You don't have to know a hell of a lot about the Federal Reserve banking system and the fractional reserve system, but really, they said it perfectly on Zeitgeist. Money is debt. Debt is
Yeah.
money. And the fact that interest is involved means that you'll never be able to pay off the debt completely.
Because it's
So-
perpetuating debt, right? So
And the funny thing was, when I was going to school, just prior to the summer, I took the summer off, and back then, being a student, I had no money, and I was right there on the poverty line. The funny thing is, I've never been that close to being debt free in my life. That's the funny bit about that. But I'm not a particularly well-spoken individual. I'm not a very smart guy. I'm not even that well dressed,
yeah,
as
I
you can
noticed.
see. But yeah, dude, I'm a slob. But
No, I just
anybody
took-
can do this.
Yeah.
Anybody can do this, and I just wanted to get out here and do this because I believe it's so important just to hear this stuff. When I'm out driving, listening to the radio, it's just commercial after commercial, and then talking heads are just discussing maybe current events, and that's as good as it gets. But they never quite touch on the issue, and if they do, they just skim it, and then they might bounce off.
Yeah.
And it's never kind of like person to person talking. And
And my biggest problem with any talk radio shows or whatever, there is a lot of stuff available on Sirius XM and stuff like XM radio, and they're actually getting really good, but most of them don't provide like you said, the depth of information that you want on it. It's kind of superficial, and that's where podcasts and Joe Rogan Experience, a bunch of different ones around the world that are being started, and unfortunately, we haven't really had that many in Canada here. The only ones that have actually been in British Columbia here, I believe, that are kind of known are the podcasts, right? The weed smokers out here that just the bud smokers that just wanna have podcasts. It's essentially just you smoke and people do strain reviews and this kind of stuff.
yeah,
But for the most part, people haven't really tapped into the podcast slash like vlogs community,
Yeah.
which is like actually a growing community. That's
Mhm.
for a while you started to see that on YouTube, like there was actually a YouTube community growing.
Yeah.
People would have YouTube parties where these YouTube celebrities would come together and they'd
Yeah.
all have
Yeah.
massive parties. And now you have subcategories of that. Like you have like groups of like the pranksters. Like they literally have a section of pranksters that just goes around doing pranks. They were totally separate entities before
Yeah.
and separate channels, that separate cities, everything, but they came together because of YouTube, and they started like this
Yeah.
little movement slash I don't know, it's just pretty awesome. Like
Yeah.
prankster videos that have been kind of a growing
Phenomenon. Yeah.
on YouTube.
Well, like, it just comes down to this. This is just our attempt to reach out to you guys. We want to connect people. We want to see things change, and I'm sure you guys too. Because how many of us wake up and we're sick of the status quo? We look at these systems. We look at ICBC. There's no shortage of you guys out there that hate that system. I'm sure it's broken. The education system, it's broken. I mean,
Everybody
it's
wants
barely
change,
functioning,
though,
but
right? That's the
everybody does want change.
And it's at that time now where people
Yeah.
are kind of expecting something to actually happen.
But the thing is, this is how we're going to do it. I mean, we might realize that, through technology, we have the ability to do it. Yes, that's true, but we've never been closer to actually being able to change things overnight. Overnight. I'm not kidding about that. If you talk to enough people, we're connected by, they said, 7 degrees of separation. That's moved down to 4 with Facebook.
Yeah.
4 degrees of separation between every single human being on the planet.
Yeah.
Now, if we start to really communicate with good intentions, I mean, when I say that, I'm going to use an example. I had to communicate with a family member of mine the other day about something pretty personal. And while I was trying to do this, I had to separate myself completely from any sort of, anger or desire to blame. That was there. But if you go at it with the intention to actually pull out something productive, to try to go at it with love, that's when things really work out for the best.
Yeah.
I challenge you, try that in daily life. Go through one day where you're actually going through things and trying to put a loving intention to everything you do, and then go at it as we might do on a daily basis.
Or even if you come at it from the other direction and you say that instead of showing love, at the end of the day, I'm going to rest my head knowing that I didn't upset anybody. If you can do that much, that's an amazing step to take. And even that, it sounds like it's an easy thing to do, but there's so many cases where, you can flip somebody the finger for like cutting you off, or just anything that you can do. Like, Louis C.K. does, Louis C.K. Damn, that's weird because I actually watch a lot of his stuff. Louis C.K. does a bit about it. He talks about how you wouldn't yell like curse words and insanely loud into somebody's face if they cut you off in a shopping cart line or whatever, right? But like if somebody comes in front of you in a car, you'll yell like bloody murder and like so many curses onto their families and their parents and stuff, right? Like you'll do whatever, anything flies at that point. But I don't know, it's something that you have to make a conscious effort about. Like, you have to actually say that I'm not gonna affect anybody negatively. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, that takes me to there's a Buddhist quote that I really, really do like, and it goes, "Today, be thankful that you learned a lot. If you didn't learn a lot, be thankful that you learned a little. If you didn't learn a little, be thankful you didn't get sick. If you did get sick, be thankful you didn't die."
Yeah.
If you died, you don't really give a shit, so. But the fact is, you'll always have something to be thankful about. And like you were saying, it does take conscious effort. In fact, anytime we admire human beings for doing anything, I've noticed it's because they made the effort. And that's glib, that's really, like, stupid to say, really. But think about the times in your life where it might have been easy to flip somebody off, and it might have been easy to do this. Any effort at all expended anywhere is never unrewarded if you're dealing with people.
Yeah.
Even if people notice that they see you struggling not to be as angry. People do appreciate that. Even if it's not on the perceptible level to you, they still do it because you perceive it that way.
It's really cool that a lot of artists are actually addressing some major issues nowadays.
Yeah.
Like, have you heard Macklemore's new song?
Oh, yeah.
The Other Side, I think it's... No.
It's called Same Love.
Yeah, The Other Side is about syrup sipping or something.
Yeah.
Right? It's about codeine and stuff. Yeah, but like this one's about homosexuality and about like homosexual rights. Really surprising to like hear that. Well, Macklemore's actually been an awesome artist from the start. He he was out of, I think he's out of Seattle. Yeah, he's out of Washington for sure. And he's like, so I'd consider him like a local artist too. And we do have a lot of local talent. You know, Mad Child is here, but we have, I don't know, like it's you haven't really heard a lot of these major issues brought up in music these days. A lot of music is sometimes distraction, but you know, it's cool. Macklemore is actually addressing this, and at the end he says like, you know, I support this. So
It doesn't work.
yeah,
Not important. But actually, that reminds me, John Cusack. And this goes back to what we talk about scientists. Just because a scientist said it, people go, oh, okay, well, then it must be true. But John Cusack, when he was asked in a press release what he thought about the whistleblower Edward Snowden, that's a guy that's come up so much in this podcast, but when he was asked what he thought about the NSA whistleblower, he actually goes, and I think I have the quote right up here. Yeah, I do. He actually goes and says, these revelations of spying on every citizen and perhaps every human being on the planet, the end of constitutional rights and American privacy, these are not subtle facts. And yet what we hear about from the press is the alleged character defects of the whistleblowers. That's the oldest bait and switch in the book. We have to say that we're not morons. No matter how the story is covered, the debate over public surveillance won't go away. And he has questioned why the government and the media are so afraid of an informed public. Ask yourselves that. Ask yourself why the Canadian government is putting so much money into programs and to commercials that advocate the pipeline, natural gas, the development of these resources. A lot of people say our economy is entirely dependent on natural resources. That might be the case now, but it would be very easy. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Very easy to actually switch to renewable resources.
check this out. If you can bring this picture up, look up underwater power plant.
Underwater power plant.
Yeah, Ricky posted this to my wall. That's another thing, by the way, that I love about Facebook. Facebook has become such a source of information that I didn't expect it to be. I always kind of had the idea that it's kind of like, you know, for social media gossip kind of stuff, like not really anything beneficial, just sharing pictures of your kids doing random stuff, whatever. Right? But now it's actually like people post and share these like amazing amount of this amazing amount of knowledge and like new information. So that's I think that's it. So basically, no, this is the picture right here. You can find this one. It's a meme.
Yeah.
It says "Meet the remote control underwater power plant."
I can't pull that up, but I've got this one.
This
So this will do for now.
1/10 scale prototype device could one day make way for a 1 milliwatt, is it, ocean current generator that can, or megawatts, I guess it would. I think is
I'm
it.
gonna say megawatt.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Milliwatts are
Yeah, that would
tiny.
be nothing.
Yeah.
1 megawatt ocean current generator that can not only function deep water, but can also be maneuvered remotely to gain access to the best currents. So it looks like it has like a,
Yeah.
you can't really bring up a picture, but
No, I
it
can't.
has like a little buoy at the top, and it looks like it's like this little. It almost looks like it's like a propeller, and on each end of this propeller thing, it has these little tubes
Yeah.
that I guess are somehow producing energy.
Yeah. Well,
But,
you know what? Just people just need to go and look at the Disclosure Project on YouTube. Just go to Disclosure Project. It's just about 2 hours long. I know it's huge, but you'll want to listen to every second of it if you're interested in UFOs and the technology therein. But Stephen Greer actually goes and says, we have had the capacity for superliminal, that's faster than light travel, since 1954, because
Yeah.
we've back engineered craft. I mean, people talk about Roswell and they go, blah, 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 that's not true. Do your research. There was a lot of outside sources. There was actually a bunch of clergymen, you know, with his congregation outside of the town when it went down. These guys came upon it first. And the government showed up. They said, you're sworn to secrecy now. Anybody that says anything, you know, put the hit on. But they did collect craft that had come down, and they began back engineering them. They began trying to take it apart, understand how it works, and apply it to technology today. I sincerely believe, I mean, I don't have proof because I've never been in there, but looking at the way technology's advanced in the last 100 years suggests to me that that is the case.
See, I don't know. Like that's what I use to use as my counter argument to that
Mm.
to that debate.
Hit me.
I say that look at the way the technology has actually advanced in like the last 100 years.
Mhm.
You can see that it hit like a point of technological boom, right? Where we dropped the nukes, like we
Yeah.
went from like within 45 years,
That was 1945, and Roswell happened in 1942, was it?
yeah, so and we were able to do that right there, right? Like that was like a major point where it went from like the Wright brothers developing the first planes, and then getting up there and all of these crazy things. 1969 they
Mhm.
sent up the first shuttle, right?
Yeah.
So to the moon.
Yeah.
And it was weird though. Like for me, I was gonna ask somebody that somebody that I ran into. He said he's into aviation, and I was gonna ask him like, don't you feel like right now we should be able to like have better means of transportation?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
like this one guy, the Life According to Jimmy guy,
yeah.
he said this, just mentioned this, and it totally just got me thinking about this for the last couple of days. Even though it was a joke that he was saying, he's like, look, we have helicopters, like big helicopters, and we have these miniature helicopters that you can remote control fly. Where's the in between? Like
Yeah.
the personal helicopters that we can go around in.
True.
Like we have the technology for both the small and the big. Where's the in between, right?
You know what's funny though? I can see people easily going, well, you know what? People are too stupid to operate their own personal helicopter. You know how many crashes there would be every day? I mean, I can easily see that, but no, it's true. Where's the in between? But look at
People
cars.
have said the same thing about cars. Yeah.
Look at cars though. Like in the last 50 years, how much has fuel economy changed? It's gone up maybe like 10K more. I mean, there was the electric car, yeah, that got pushed out, and there was the water-powered car that got pushed out too.
Yeah.
I know that there are other technologies that could vastly improve that form of transportation. It's completely unnecessary for us to use fossil fuels. Everybody said it, but we need to keep saying it. We need to keep hammering that point home because we simply don't need to do this anymore.
Yeah.
It's a joke.
No, like, and a lot of people don't think about solar power as being an option, right? They don't realize that even if you don't have direct sunlight, even if it's cloudy outside,
Yeah.
during the day you still absorb a lot of energy.
Yeah. Look at the leaps and bounds that have occurred with solar energy.
And like Los Angeles could literally, like, do you know how much sunlight they get?
Yeah. And that's not even to talk about geothermal energy or any of these other forms.
There's so many other forms, and obviously Tesla's energy being like, if we get into the idea of why isn't this energy being promoted, then the end thing is always the Tesla thing for me.
Yeah.
Like you have literally unlimited amounts of energy available to you at all times. Doesn't require many power plants.
It doesn't even
station.
need power lines. It can be transmitted wirelessly.
Exactly.
So I'd really like to hammer this home. I've heard it said by people, but we have everything we need to eliminate just about every single problem we have on Earth. When I say just about, I mean there are human problems within ourselves, dealing with ego, dealing with these things. Call it a spiritual problem. Those are things that technology can't solve. In fact, that's the linchpin in the issue, I believe. Until we actually develop ourselves beyond this problem, that is to say, we actually take responsibility for our actions and we assume control of our own society. That's not leaving it in the hands of a tiny group of individuals bent on control. That's when each one of us steps in. We won't be ready for the technology that will eliminate the problems.
Yeah.
You know, I often think about the time I spent in school, and as beneficial as the information was, my life never benefited more than the time I took away from school to go away and just develop myself. Everything opened up for me when I took time to meditate and to really consider what I needed, as opposed to, say, running through the traditional channels, going to school, getting a job, these things. While they might help to supplement a superficial future, they're nothing compared to actually sitting down and asking yourself the big questions, which, contrary to what I think we're told a lot, we do have the answers for them. Nobody but you has the answers for them, in fact. Answers like, who am I? Like, are you just a ego in a skin? Yeah. What are you? Until you can answer that, I don't think it's possible for you to really develop forward.
Yeah.
Like one of my teachers says, you can't climb a mountain with a broken leg.
Yeah.
and that's your impediment.
Yep.
Getting these things under control.
I don't know. I think it's a good point to go off. It's about over an hour, I'd say,
Yep.
altogether. But this is number 5, I guess, that we put out. This is, again, we're always gonna keep getting more and more input about what we're gonna do differently and what we can improve on.
Mhm.
So please keep throwing it at us. We really do appreciate the amount of people that have been giving us I've been getting a lot of feedback. And the most valuable feedback is people that aren't just saying, "Oh, we love what you're doing and stuff," but they're actually saying, "You need to fix this about yourself. Your speech needs to get better, or you need to be a little bit more comfortable with your topics and stuff."
Yeah, you need to get an updated hat.
Yeah, exactly, right. That's
You guys can't see it, but it's a Vancouver Grizzlies hat.
You gotta go retro sometimes, man. Like the Grizzlies, like I grew up, I actually used to follow them a lot, and
Yeah.
I wish that the basketball team could come back here. And there's always a couple of people out there that give me random little rays of hope, and they'll say "Oh, did you hear that this team's apparently going to be bought out?" But anyways, if it happens one day, I will be on
Cloud9.
I would be on Cloud9, no doubt. So again, this is really fun, and we are gonna keep putting these out. I will be going on a trip to Europe in about a month or so, and we're arranging so that
You
while
mean
I'm
for
away,
about a month or in a month?
in a week for a month. So and a couple of my friends are gonna try to everybody knows Graeme Beamiss and Ricky Cookson and
Oh, not everybody, but
everybody out here.
so
But yeah, so everybody's gonna kind of come together and try to help and try to put something out while I'm
Mhm.
away too. And thank you so much for tuning in, and hopefully we keep putting out more stuff that you guys enjoy, and then hopefully you guys keep tuning in.
yeah. Until then, take care of yourselves, keep informed. Peace and love.
Peace
Try to
and
spread
love.
it.